How fast is the new Isuzu Impulse Turbo? How does 950 miles per hour sound? The Impulse Turbo. Faster than a speeding... Well, you know.
And welcome to Reliving My Youth. My name is Noel. My guest this week is actor David Leisure. Now, the funny man, probably best known for his roles in the Airplane movies. In fact, he discusses what he had to do to actually get the role, and he was actually a roommate of Ted Stryker, played by Robert Hayes. He also played Charley on the Golden Girls spinoff Empty Nest. In fact, Empty Nest originally was a backdoor pilot on an episode of The Golden Girls, starring a completely different cast that included Paul Dooley and Rita Moreno. In fact, David was the only actor from that original pilot to make it to the second pilot, which eventually became the series that ran for multiple years, starring Richard Mulligan and Dreyfus the dog. And we discuss Joe Isuzu, probably one of the greatest TV spokesmen in history. Those commercials were hysterical, legendary, and Joe Isuzu's name was even dropped in the 1988 presidential debate. That's how over Joe Isuzu was. And we discuss who today is the current Joe Isuzu, if anybody is. There are a lot of great commercials, but no one really can be Joe Isuzu. And we also discuss him getting mistaken for John Larroquette, and as well as which serious actors today could play in a remake of Airplane. And we discuss which awful movie should be remade. I don't know if it should be remade, but I mentioned it and David lost it. It was really, really funny. Dave, great guy. I hope you enjoy my conversation with him. So David, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, so just fill us in. What have you been up to these days?
I'm laughing because I'm in my mid-70s now, and I've had more doctor's appointments than rounds of golf.
Wow.
It's just one of those things. I've tried to stay in shape my entire life because when I was a kid, I was really sort of obese. And so around the time I was 15 in high school, I lost 70 pounds.
Wow.
On purpose. And that's what got me into the drama department, because I developed a sense of humor as a self-defense mechanism.
Right.
You know, because kids will be kids and they pick on. Anyway, so now that I'm in the waning years of my life, I've been trying to. I'm going in for the 100,000-mile checkup thing and getting new piston rings and new seals and changing the transmission fluid and all that stuff.
Oh, good. Yeah. So I guess you can say you're on the back nine, right?
I'm on the back nine. Exactly.
I had, a couple of people you've worked with on the show, past years. So let's start with Robert Hayes. I know you were, I had him on a couple of years ago. Great guy. I know you were roommates with him. Yeah. So Airplane, how did you get the role? And just talk about just the legacy of that movie. It happened to be on cable earlier this morning, so I was watching it. So it's so fresh in my mind. Just talk about getting that role.
It's a classic film. It's a classic comedy. It's brilliantly done. Bob and I, of course, go back over 50 years into college, and I auditioned for that role like 3 times, and one of the criteria was myself, and the other Hare Krishna guy kind of looked alike. Also, we were willing to shave our heads, so that was that kind of cinched the deal for me.
Right. On set, I mean, I've heard the legendary stories of Leslie Nielsen's fart machine.
All true.
Yeah.
all true.
Yeah. Were you a casualty of it?
Oh, he was hysterical. He was so good at it. He was a virtuoso. He could have been on Carnegie Hall doing this, but it worked so well because he would go up to an extra, like a pretty girl or something like that, and he'd go like, he'd start flirting with it, and he had this fart machine tucked under his arm, and he'd be in the middle of a sentence, and all of a sudden he'd let one out, and he'd say, "Oh, excuse me, I had onions for lunch," and the rest of us would just be cracking up. He was so good at it.
Yeah. That's I think why that movie works so well. There were so many like serious, like straight actors in these roles. I mean, him, Peter Graves, Robert Stack, Lloyd Bridges. I mean, and even non-actors. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and stuff like that.
Yeah. Did Robert tell you when he was on your show? Did he tell you that the studios wanted comic actors in the part?
Yes.
And because they didn't get the joke, right? And so he said, no, you don't understand. We want the real guys. We want real serious actors who want to play this part real, for serious, because that's where the humor is. And boy, did they knock it out of the park.
Yeah, absolutely. And he also told me that they originally wanted Pete Rose, but I think they were filming during baseball season, so he couldn't do it.
I didn't hear that story, but that would have been great.
Yeah, but I think it just worked out so well with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in that role. He was fantastic.
Oh,
yeah. What and I know it made the sequel that you were in it as well, and it had some funny moments, but why do you think that like comedy sequels always like kind of like disappoint?
Yeah, the only sequel I ever thought was better than the original or as good was like Aliens.
Right.
It was really cool, And this didn't work because the joke, they didn't get the joke. They didn't understand what made it work in the first place. And so I think the Zucker brothers, they said, we don't want to, we've already done this, so we're not going to do it again in this format. So, but they did knock it out of the park with the TV show Police Squad and all the
Naked Gun
movies, because they knew how to make the joke work. And the poor guy who directed this film, he just didn't get the joke.
Right. Yeah, and I always feel like the Police Squad TV show was like years before its time.
It was so good.
Yeah.
It was so funny. I mean, one scene I always remember, they're going to put a tap on the phone, and it's like a beer tap.
Yeah.
And then he says, let's go up and talk in the Japanese garden, and here's all these Asian people in pots.
Yeah.
Not moving.
Right.
Just in pots.
Yeah. No, it was just, yeah. And, they used a lot of stuff from the TV show into the first Naked Gun movie because it made sense because no one watched the TV show. So it wasn't really like they're recycling stuff. So
Exactly. And I love the fact on Police Squad that the guest star was killed at the very beginning of the episode.
Exactly. That was always great. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Do you feel like we're kind of like in a dark time now for comedies? I feel like there hasn't been a really good comedy in years.
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I think, it's been a while. We had a lot of rom-coms going on there for about 30 years.
Yeah.
And, I mean, a lot of them. And then they've just sort of disappeared. I'm not really sure. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I never thought about it.
Yeah. Do you feel it's like maybe like...
We might be in a dark time. I think the television has a lot of comedies on, and they're doing well. They're doing really well. But in the movies, I'm just not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. You feel like maybe like they're afraid to like offend people now because it's such a delicate time?
Yeah, I get that. I do get that. I mean, I know people say all the time, you couldn't make like Blazing Saddles today.
Exactly.
Right. And I'm like, is that true? Maybe it is true. I always thought, no, you could do that. Couldn't you? But I don't know. I mean, there's nobody's come out and just lambasted everybody without, pulling their punches like that, or Monty Python, or some of the other ones. That's a really good question. I hate to think that it is true.
Yeah.
That means we're we've gotten so uptight we were afraid to make fun of ourselves.
Yeah, I saw something on the internet a couple years ago, made me laugh. It was like an edited version of Blazing Saddles for today, and it showed the credits. It showed Cleveland Little on the horse in the beginning, and then it went right to the end credits.
I I did watch it. They had it on the American Movie Classics,
Yeah,
the network, and of course it was for TV, and they cut out every N word.
I know. You can't watch like those movies
I mean,
on.
you can't watch it like that. I mean, you missed the whole point.
Right.
The new sheriff is a what?
Exactly. Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's a brilliant. It's brilliant.
Right, and I hear now that they're making like Spaceballs is great, another Mel Brooks classic, and I know they're making a sequel to that, and I'm like, I'll see it, but I have no expectations for it.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I hear about they're making this or that or a remake of this, and I cringe because, why don't you remake something that was really bad?
Right, exactly.
I know you want to go with a winner. I get that.
Yeah.
Okay. It was so good, you want to do it again.
Right.
But why don't you go find something that didn't work and make it work?
Exactly. Try remaking Ishtar, or something like that.
That's a great idea. See, even as you said that, I said, oh, I didn't know if you could fix that.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
You might spend a lot of money and not get the fix you were hoping.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if Scorsese, Spielberg, Christopher Nolan can fix that one, right?
Christopher Nolan. Yeah, redo Ishtar. That would be interesting.
Oh yeah, totally. It'd be like Christian Bale and Cillian Murphy together doing it or something.
Oh my gosh. Could you imagine that?
I see it.
I mean, that would be so. I mean, just the thought of those two in a comedy would be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
The comedy stylings of Christian Bale.
Yeah, right.
Looking at the light.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. Hey, it worked in Airplane with some of those serious actors. Why not, right?
Well, so there you go. So, yeah, put Cillian Murphy and Christian Bale and into where they're doing like an Airplane kind of a thing. That would be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. They should do that.
Fun.
Yeah. Or like, you have like Tom Hardy as like, the Robert Hayes role or something like that. You could...
That would be funny. Oh, that's some funny stuff you're saying.
I should write this down and send it to them.
Well, I hope you're recording it because you'll have it down anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. And another comedy, I mean, I can't believe it's almost 30 years now, but when they kind of like adapt TV shows into movies, sometimes it doesn't work. I feel like the Brady Bunch movie totally worked, and you had a good cameo in that movie.
Oh yeah, that totally worked. It was perfect because it was making fun of that era, right? So they sort of like lived in the 60s and 70s, right, in the modern day, and so it was just kind of strange to see all these people.
Yeah, I mean, how much fun was that role for you?
Oh, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
that was, and Betty Thomas, who directed. She called me up several times. Said, "Come on, do this film." I said, "I don't know. I was on the show still. I was on Empty Nest at the time. So I asked them. I said, "Can I go out and do this movie because we're not done?" And they said, "Yeah, go. It's our last season." So I did it. It was so much fun.
Yeah, and that's also another thing where the sequel failed to live up to the original movie as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you mentioned Empty Nest, and I love the show. A spinoff of the Golden Girls. I don't know if people know that, but they also had. They don't really do that as much now. It's called, I guess, like a backdoor pilot, where they take an episode of a show that's on, and they do.
We were a 13-minute insert into the Golden Girls, and I got that part because for some reason, Brandon Tartikoff, who was in charge of NBC at the time, before he went to Paramount, just adored me. And he kept trying to stick me into pilot after pilot after pilot, and none of them went. And so when I actually saw what we did, I said, well, there's no way this is going to fly. So I didn't even think about it. And then all of a sudden it got picked up, except turns out that they restructured the entire cast to, they got rid of Paul Dooley, who was brilliant,
Right.
Rita Moreno, who was wonderful, and Jeffrey Lewis, who was Juliette Lewis's father, also was in it. And you don't necessarily think of him as a comedian, but he was terrific. And the premise was just sort of insane. So I thought, well, there's no way this is going to go. So but it went, and so we ended up with Richard Mulligan and Dinah Manoff and Christy McNichol, and it just was wonderful. It was I loved being on that show.
Yeah, and Susan Harris is brilliant, with the Golden Girls, and it just carried over into that show. Now, when they didn't pick up the original pilot, did you have to re-audition for the Richard Mulligan version?
No, I was a go. As a matter of fact, it was about 3 years into the show, and I was walking across the set, and I remember this succinctly. I was walking across the set, I stopped in my tracks, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, they got rid of everybody but me? I'm the luckiest guy in Hollywood.
Yeah. And I feel like your character, and I mean this in the most sincere, biggest compliment ever, was you had such a punchable face on that show.
Thank you.
Yeah, and anytime, and I feel like you were like the original Kramer, from Seinfeld. You came in, you just barged in, you took food, you'd say something, and then just leave.
Well, if you think about it, my character was obnoxious, mooching neighbor, and I had segued all the way from the lying, smarmy car salesman Joe Isuzu.
Yeah.
So if you think about my acting range, it's lying, smarmy, mooching, obnoxious guy.
Right.
So if you say I'm punchable, thank you.
Oh, anytime.
Job well done.
Yeah, I feel like maybe you and like John Larroquette are like the two. If you want like a swarmy, punchable guy, those are your two guys.
Isn't that so funny? So John Larroquette, who's 25 feet tall,
Right.
and I'm like 5 feet tall.
Right.
I would always run into somebody. Oh, I recognize you from TV. I go, oh, thank you very much. And he says, oh, so who are you? I go, I was on what were you on? I was like on Empty Nest. No, that's not it.
Right.
It was Joe Isuzu. No.
Yeah.
Airplane. No, not that. 10 things. No. I go, Night Court. Yes. And for some reason, they thought I was John Larroquette. This happened a lot.
Oh, that's funny.
So after a while, they said, can I get your autograph? I said, sure, I just signed John Larroquette.
Yeah. You should have signed in not John Larroquette.
I wish I'd thought of that.
Yeah, right. And Empty Nest, I also had Dinah on a couple years ago, and she was fantastic. And I love the chemistry between you two. Just like I said before, you barge in, you take some food, you kind of rib her and leave. So just talk about what's working with her and just the chemistry the two of you had.
We're in love with each other. I love her so much. Oh, what a dear friend. Excuse me. She, when we started doing the show, it just sort of was a natural outcome of her character and my character. And it was just perfect. And we just had this great little animosity toward each other. They're kind of like Newman and Seinfeld,
Right.
And it just always worked out that way. And I just came in sort of oblivious to everything and give her a little shot. And she'd give me a little shot back. And it was just so much fun.
Yeah. I love the episode where the two of you like slept together and just like the morning of how awkward it was. It was just classic.
Oh, we could not get through the kiss.
Yeah.
We had that first little kiss on stage. And the audience, of course, we always did it in front of a live audience. And we couldn't get through it in rehearsal, let alone. And when I said to her, how are we going to do this in front of a live audience? We can't get through the kiss. Because it's like kissing your sister,
Right.
And I'm like, so it was so hard to do. I think we must have done 10 takes before we could stop, spit taking into each other's own mouth.
The rest of the cast, I mean, working with Richard, but I mean, the star of the show obviously was Dreyfuss. So how was he to work with?
Dreyfuss, he was a sweetheart. He was so good. They'd always do the eyebrow thing,
Yeah.
And only that works because there'll be one person on one side of the stage and the other person on the other, and they like signal him, and he'd like, but he was told not to move, so he had to keep his head down. So the only thing he could move was his eyebrows as he looked back and forth. And he was a sweetheart. I remember once we celebrated his birthday in a camera shoot. So they made a birthday cake out of hamburger. So they wanted to get a shot of me and Dreyfuss, and I'm holding his head up with my hand, holding this piece of cake in front of him. And he's drooling the whole time. I mean, just drool. So down my arm was cascading this like effervescent flowing of saliva from Dreyfuss's mouth and pooling up on the stage floor there for a while. He was a sweetheart of a dog, though.
Probably up there in top 3 TV dogs of all time.
Lassie, Dreyfuss.
Yeah.
Asta.
Right, yeah.
I don't know if you remember Asta from The Thin Man.
And I'd probably even mention, I know you don't watch the show, but Tiger from the Brady Bunch was up there too, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Rin Tin Tin.
Rin, yeah.
Rin Tin Tin.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Rin Tin Tin. Yo, Rinny.
Right. Star of the show.
Yeah,
I mean,
nobody knows what I'm talking about except you.
Yeah, exactly. It's all right. No one's listening anyway. No. Yeah.
There you go.
And obviously the show was a spinoff of the Golden Girls, and you had all the actresses on from time to time, and eventually Stell Getty, who played Sophia, became a series regular. So I always hear stories about B. Arthur, that she hated gum chewing on set, and she was always barefoot.
She was always barefoot, and that made her just. I found that very attractive. And she was a very serious actress, so she worked very seriously. And if somebody was chewing gum, they could be like 25 yards away, and she'd go like, "What's that?" And she'd snap up, like, "That guy's chewing gum over there." And so, I mean, she was sort of fanatical about the whole thing.
Yeah.
But you get a couple of drinks in her, and the next thing you know, she's got you on your lap.
Yeah, I had Sam McMurray on recently, and he guest starred on the show, and he was telling me how the women were very professional, but they weren't friendly offset.
That's not true. He's full of crap. I know Sam. He's a good buddy of mine. He's full of crap. They were great. I used to go over there all the time and flirt with them because they had the best crash service table in the world.
Right.
I mean, along with the M&Ms, they had lobster thermidor. I mean, you could get anything. So I'd go over there and flirt with the girls, and I go, "Hey, how you doing?" I just thought I'd visit the set, and they said, I'm piling a plate of wonderful food, as opposed to a bagel. They had the best stuff. So I used my wiles on them just to get the food.
Right. And I met, you worked, more closely with Estelle Getty since she was, a regular on the show. What was she like?
Yeah. So Estelle was the youngest of all the girls.
Right.
Played the oldest one. If you notice how her character would always go like, "Dorothy, you're insane," and then turn to the camera and go like, "Who knew?" She'd say something like that. The reason she was always turning the camera and delivering her line, because that's where her lines were.
Oh, okay.
Because she couldn't remember a damn thing. And so at the table read, first time you get the script, you sit down at the table, you read the script, she just nailed everything. As the week went on, she got worse and worse and worse and worse and couldn't remember things. So they had stuff written all over the place. And so she could find her line, read it, and just read it off the card. And it worked. It worked great. It became part of her character. It was so funny.
And I always feel like every sitcom finale always ends the same way. Everyone either moves out of the house, they leave town, and the last shot's always like a portrait, a picture of the cast. And Empty Nest was no different.
And it's so funny they called it Empty Nest, right?
Yeah.
So the first episode, the girls are gone. Richard's a widower. He's got Dreyfus, and the girls would come over and visit. And so the writers were like writing all this pipe to get him back in the house. Pipe, by pipe, I mean they were laying pipe. It means that half of the script ended up, why are you coming back into the house every day?
Right.
You live over there. So eventually they had to figure out a way to get him to move back into the house with their father, because it was too complicated when they didn't live there.
Right.
They would come over, have an excuse. Why are you visiting me? I just wanted to make sure you're eating okay. So once they moved him back in the house, then everything worked really, really well. But oddly enough, it was still called Empty Nest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the nest wasn't empty any longer.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So what do you think happened to Charley when the show ended?
Oh, you mean Charley? That's a good question. Let's see. What are the case scenarios for Charley? Let's see. He loved women. He loved beer. Let's see. I could just see him some island somewhere after the cruise broke down, and he just stayed, and maybe he's just like sort of turned into Jimmy Buffett, maybe.
Right. Or he tried opening, Harry's house, but the door was locked, so he couldn't get in anymore.
He's sitting outside starving.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So how often do you walk in public and people scream Joe Isuzu at you?
Oh, never. I'm so old now,
Right.
dude. I don't look anything like I did. I'm an old gray-haired man. So, I mean, when you see me, if you see me, you go like, yeah, okay, that's an interesting-looking old guy. I wonder who he is. He looks kind of familiar, but
Yeah.
I have no idea who he is.
Right.
That's about where I'm at right now.
Okay.
My hair is white. I have a goatee that's white. I'm shrinking.
Yeah.
It's just part of the deal. So
Right.
I live up in Park City, Utah, and so the only thing I want to do now is ski and golf, and I'm so fortunate to be able to afford that. So I live up here. I got my pensions, and in the summertime I play golf. In the winter I go ski, and that's all I do anymore.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. So do you feel like the Joe Isuzu character made your career?
Well, it certainly got me onto Empty Nest. It certainly made Brandon Tartikoff take note of me, and also Tony Thomas and Paul Witt, because this character, this commercial character I had, was sort of prevalent everywhere because I was on every channel all the time for
Right.
a couple of 3 years. And it was a very successful commercial. People loved him. So it really kicked me into high gear. I had been doing commercials for a few years. I was in my mid-30s. I was still waiting tables. I was still going like, hey, you want fruit or do you want fries? I'm in my mid-30s going like, man, this may not be working out. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and she says, why don't you take a commercial workshop? And I said, well, I'm trying to be an actor. I said, well, actors are in commercials. So I said, okay. So I took this commercial workshop, and basically it was just like messing around like you would in an acting class. And so immediately I started working, and I went from making $9,000 a year waiting tables to $25,000 that year, and I only worked 4 days.
Wow.
Because I was doing commercials. I was like, oh my God, this is great. And then I just got better and better, and I did more and more. But it was like in these commercials, I was sort of like part of the commercial. I was sort of invisible. I was good, but it wasn't like a big deal. But when I got the Isuzu thing, it just put me into a whole nother thing where I was completely identified with the character. And I was really identifiable then because I looked like I looked, and people recognized me all over the place. So it was quite a phenomenal for me. It's like very strange to lose your anonymity as a person, and people recognize you wherever you go. I can only imagine what it must be like for some of the big superstars. But for me, it was like, wow. I mean, geez, everywhere I go, people say, "Hey, look, it's Joe Isuzu."
Yeah.
And it was kind of cool. I do have a bunch of fans now on Facebook. There's like 10,000 of them, and what they do is they buy old Isuzus
Okay.
and they fix them up, and they go off roading with them, the troopers, and so they've sort of adopted me as the mascot. So they do this thing like in Wayne's World. We're not worthy.
Right.
We're not worthy. And they've made me their sort of mascot.
Did you end up getting any free cars as a result?
That's funny. A free car. Yeah. So my agent at the time, she says, "Oh, I negotiated you for a car." I said, "Oh, great. So they're going to give me a car?" "Yeah, they're going to give you a car." So at the end of the year, she sent me a bill for 10% of the price of the car. I went, okay. So the car wasn't totally free, right? So the next year they gave me another one. So she sent me another bill for 10% of the price of the car. So I went to a Isuzu dealership and I said, "How many parts can I buy for this amount of money?" And so they said, "Here's a hood, and here's some wheels, and here's a door panel." I said, "Okay, here." So I paid for them. I said, "I want you to deliver them to this address." So I sent 10% of the car to my agent.
Do you have any particular favorite commercial out of all the ones you did?
Bullet. I like
Yeah.
Bullet. Bullet was one of my favorites. The Queen,
Right. Yeah.
where I'm tormenting
The guard, and he chases after you.
guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite ones. So
Yeah.
those are some of the good ones.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the one where I'm up on. I'm actually in Moab, Utah, up on top of the cliff there. When they took the car up there, they took me up there, and we filmed this whole thing. I was actually on a cliff, on a pinnacle out in the Utah desert.
Okay.
It was it's about 2,500 feet up in the air. And it was sort of a takeoff on a Chevy commercial that they had done back in the 60s, where they put a beautiful girl in a convertible Chevy up there. And then they put Joe Isuzu up there, talking about, how big the Isuzu Trooper is, as big as the Astrodome and all that kind of
Right.
stuff.
Right. Yeah. Now I know, like, obviously this year it's election year, and were you watching back in '88 when they had a debate and Michael Dukakis mentioned Joe Isuzu?
No, but I heard about it a lot.
Right.
I didn't see it live, but I sure heard about it afterwards.
Not only were you, a staple in pop culture, then now you're in the political scene.
I know. And since I'm a liar, I'm a smarmy liar, I should run for office. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'd vote for you. Why not? Right? What's the difference between you or anybody else now?
Everybody knows they all lie, so I might as well be
Exactly.
be a politician.
Exactly. And then you came back a few years later doing those spoofs of the Mitt Romney campaign, which were kind of funny.
Yeah, that's so funny. I spoofed Mitt Romney. I tried to do the best I could. I would like to apologize to Mitt because I didn't realize how much I'd miss him this time period today.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I know. It's so funny how politics has changed over the even say 15, 20 years. So
I know. I mean, yeah. I don't want to get too deep.
Yeah, exactly. Could just leave it at that.
We are now a polarized nation, but yeah, it's the world has changed a lot.
Yeah, totally. Now, like with the commercial scene, who do you think is like today's Joe Isuzu?
Let's see. Well, I love watching commercials. My wife, turn that. I go, no, honey, it's a commercial. I said, this guy's really good. So I've watched how Jake from State Farm has got the best gig in the world right now. He gets to work with all these sports guys and now famous actors and actresses.
Yeah.
And what a great gig, and he's getting paid for it. What a wonderful gig he's got. And what's funny is Jake from State Farm, what are you wearing? Khakis. He used to be this like dorky white guy.
Exactly.
Like this really cool black guy. And it was like, that's a really good commercial. I think that guy's done really well. Not so much, he's not like Joe Isuzu or anything like that, but
Right.
He's really cool. Also, Progressive Insurance.
Yeah,
Flo.
Flo, yeah.
And the guy who plays Janie on it.
Yeah, he's great too. Yeah.
Freaking brilliant. He's so good at being that nerdish guy. And she's terrific too. She comes from the Groundlings group
Right.
In LA on Melrose. And Stephanie is fantastic. She's fantastic.
Yeah, like why do you think it's always like the insurance companies that put out the best commercials?
Oh, I didn't know it was always the insurance companies. Is that true?
I mean,
did you just make that up?
No, I mean, we mentioned State Farm with Jake, and then Progressive. I mean, you got the Liberty commercials, and of course, like Geico. Geico's always great commercials.
The Liberty commercials with the
Emu.
With the emu.
Yeah.
Emu. Oh yeah, that's good. That guy's good too.
Yeah.
You're and once again, you have enlightened me, and you're right.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
I don't know. It's just a gift, I guess.
It's a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like all the Geico commercials, I mean, they've been putting out amazing commercials for like decades now.
Yeah, they have. The Geico. The Gecko.
Yeah. I mean, the Cavemans, I mean, they even made a TV show about the Cavemans.
Oh yeah, that's so funny. Even a caveman would do it.
Yeah.
That was a good commercial too.
You're
right.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
After you've said that, now I'm going to have to reevaluate my entire life.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But Joe is on top. So, I mean, everyone else is looking up to him. So that's all that matters.
Thank you I know you have to say that, but thank you.
No, of course not. And if anyone's, listening, all those commercials are on YouTube and they're very funny. They still hold up to this day. So everyone check them out. They're really good. My wife is she used to be, she doesn't really watch it anymore now, was a big Days of Our Lives fan. And, sometimes she'll make me sit there and watch it. And it was one episode where you came up and I'm like, oh shit, it's David. That's awesome. So how did you get that role?
I played a DA, I think.
Yeah.
Days. Yeah. I made really good friends with Galen Garrett.
Okay.
So we're still pals today.
Yeah. So what was like the difference between working on a sitcom as opposed to like a soap opera?
Oh my God. It's like sitcoms, you've got maybe 40 pages of stuff to shoot. These guys shoot 120 pages every day, and it's all dialogue. Soap operas are all dialogue motivated. It just moves. And so they shoot like a show and a half or show and a quarter every day to keep up. And so when you got one shot at this, because they got to move on, it's a juggernaut.
Right.
You got to get going. So it was a little tricky for me to learn at the beginning. So like, because I really wanted all my dialogue to be perfect, and they don't really care about that as long as you're in the ballpark, and you get the emotion right. That's fine. Cut. Let's move on.
Right.
And you're done. You're done. So and there's a fade out thing that they do when they break for commercials. It always cracks me up.
Right.
Where there is no dialogue, and it's kind of like Saturday Night Live where they do the Californians.
Oh yeah.
At the very end, they show everybody and they're just staring at the camera.
Right.
Well, so you're done talking on a soap opera, and they just there's like 15 seconds of roll off where you just have to like think, relax, take your glasses off, look at the other person, think up the other person, and the music swells, and then they go to the commercial. But you're not saying anything. Right. And it feels like an eternity.
Yeah, I would always, joke about that with my wife. I mean, it's like, that's the best part of the show. They're so serious. It's great.
It's so serious.
Yeah.
It's so serious.
Yeah. But David, I really appreciate your time today. This was fantastic.
My pleasure. You're very so much. I had a terrific time.
And a special thanks to David for joining me today. And if you have a guest suggestion, you can hit me up on X, formerly Twitter, @TheFirstNoel19. could also like the page Reliving My Youth on Facebook. You can go to iTunes and check out all the past episodes we've had, over 300. And please rate and review the show. I would really appreciate it. If you don't have iTunes, not a problem. The show can be found on SoundCloud, Spotify, Podbean, Amazon Music, basically wherever you can find a podcast. A new episode will be out soon. Stay safe, everybody. We'll see you then.